And here we are. Hello, everyone. I decided that I would do a whole new section on here because the Crowley case, it seems to be winding down, although we're not walking away. So I decided I would start reviewing books. I read a lot of books. And so I sat there and I thought about it. And I really think the perfect way to segue into this whole new section is to invite Greg on. And thank you so much, Greg, for joining. He's not feeling so good today, so really double thank you.
No problem.
To go over his book, The Gray Stage, because as you know, that's has to do with the Crowley case, and I would really like to hear from Greg's own mouth what got him started, why he decided to write the book, how he heard about this, and I know he has said this multiple times, but just in case there are any new viewers, we want it to come straight from the horse's mouth. So, Greg, again, thank you so much for being here, and I'm sorry you don't feel well.
That's okay. Always happy to be here, especially to talk about this case. Such a very unusual case. And when I first started looking into this, I did not plan on writing a book. I think one of the only reasons that I did is because we had done so much research, there was so much information out there. And I felt like it wasn't really getting the mainstream attention, or, there were so many things that were being twisted. There were so many different views on this, even among all of us great people. And I thought, you know what, I really want to try to take as much of just the factual data about the case and try to put it into one small, concise book. The book is about 200 pages, if that, I think. And that's if you count, the title pages for each chapter, if you count sources, et cetera, et cetera. If you count all of that, it's probably still about 200 pages.
204.
204.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
not
that's
very long.
and that's big print. It's probably 13. The text, I forget what the font is, but it looks like 12 or 13 maybe, just by glancing at it. It's been so long that I
Yeah,
don't even know what it is.
it's a little larger than
It's a little
12.
larger. Yeah,
But that's okay because it's easy to read. Easier to read.
easier to read.
So yeah,
But it
I
was,
liked the font. So
yeah, no, and I felt like, we needed to have some type of a book out there. We were hitting them with everything. And so the book came along, which then inspired the Gray Stage podcast. And then I don't know if I had the website up at that point, but it was really for the new researchers, because we're still seeing new researchers. I have 3 David Crowley channels, and we're still seeing new people that come on to and have never heard about this case, or have just heard somebody mentioned it. So they go and they look for more research. Well, I don't want them to go and just find what the mainstream news media says, what the propaganda says about this. I want them to actually be able to find all of the raw data and look at it and decide for themselves and have it all in one place without my own views and everything. And that was a big challenge with this book, was trying to keep my own thoughts and my own views out of it as much as possible. Hey there, Iconic. How are you?
and
I'm good.
I do have to say, I do have to say that that was one of the things that impressed me about you from the beginning. As you know, I'm like a bull in a china shop. There's nothing delicate about the way I approach or say things, and I
I
know
like
that
it.
about myself.
Yeah.
It gets me in so much trouble. And I'm one of those where I speak first and I'll apologize later because oftentimes I'm wrong. And I have, it's like, okay, so and when you started saying, hey, it used to frustrate me because it's just my personality. But you're like, okay, what's the source? Where's their source? Where did you read that? And I would sit there and go, well, how can you not know? It's in the reports. And you're like, where? Where in the reports? So you really forced me to focus more on what is actually there and not, because even though I may have been citing a source, if it's not really, like this page, that document, whatever, it's really just an opinion. And so thank you. I mean, you really helped me to learn to focus in on what really matters. And that's what I really, really like about this book. For those of you who have not seen it, this is Greg's book.
You
And
got a few sticky notes there too.
I do. and and it's highlighted in a
And
lot
it's highlighted. Wow.
of um It's called The Gray Stage by Greg Fernandez Jr. And I will put I forgot to do that. I will put the link where they can get this book. You'll send me the link and then I'll put it in the description.
Absolutely.
But how long and when did you decide to actually start writing this book, and how long did it take you?
It must have been about 2018, I think. And I think it was after Eric Nelson's film came out. I think that's what really kind of got me going. It may have been before that, but it was probably 2018. At the earliest, 2017 is when I started thinking maybe I'll write a book. I was still working on my first book, and so I was I had learned a lot from writing that first book. It was just a nightmare, and I went over it the other day. And it's like it's still kind of a cluster in some ways, but everything that I learned, it really helped me write this book pretty fast. I mean, I published it at the end of 2019. So I probably spent about a year, I would say, about a year actually writing it and then rewriting it. And the good thing was that the research was already done, because I already had all of these, just like all of us, these big notepads, notebooks of all this notes and all the things that I felt were relevant. So when people would ask me about this in our Facebook group, I would have the references, and so I would be able to quickly come up with it. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, if I just write a book, if I take all the stuff that I've already handwritten, why not just put that into one book? And then I can go back if somebody asks me, which is what I do now. I go back to my own book. What'll happen sometimes is people will actually ask me things that are in my book, and I'm like, where did you hear that? Go back. Oh, it's in your book. Okay, well. and so I would say it took me about a year to write it. And it was published at the end of 2019, because the podcast started pretty quickly after that.
Yeah. And I mean, I sit here and I look at a lot of the stuff that you've included in here and how much we've learned since you've published this book.
Very true.
What I mean, what I like is how you, I know we'll talk about this in a bit, but your section called The Gray Shame. And you don't just go over the documents of the court case, you actually bring in and talk about all of the other people that were invested or part of the Gray State movie, and whether it was training or acting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the title of that, The Gray Shame, is so perfect, because it turns out that the behavior of so many was so shameful. So what were you thinking when you decided to call it The Gray Shame?
Yeah, so that's interesting that you bring that up, because before I started writing the books, I would publish just these small little blurbs about different things that were happening, trying to document, because there were people that were going and they would look up what is going on with the David Crowley case. So on my website, which is probably thegraystage.wordpress.com, that's what it was. If you go to thegraystage.com, it'll take you there too. But so I had been writing all of these small little stories about just things as they were happening, things that I thought were relevant that people needed to know. And so most of that chapter, The Gray Shame, is just a kind of like a redo of all of those small little blurbs that I had written, and I took them all and I put them into one spot. And the goal was to make it a timeline. This is kind of my version of a timeline there. And it sometimes it jumps around, but for the most part, that chapter should be a timeline, starting with David Crowley meeting his wife, and then going into the whole to really to the last year of their life is really the basis of it. And it was called The Gray Shame because of the conversations that I had with David Crowley's friends, and how shameful that I thought that it really was of what they were saying about David Crowley, how quickly they were saying it, and then how they were going after people who disagreed with it too. And there were so many shameful things, how the police acted, how the police responded, how they missed bullets, And a lot of the jumping to conclusions on this, when it's such a tragic story with a 5-year-old child, uh, all under the age, all three of them, obviously, the two parents, they're all under the age of 30. And, they had everything going for them. They were making a big name for themselves. And they were going to do something. I think they were going to do something really, really special. I think they did. I think in 2012, they really did something special that I didn't gravitate to at that time. But there was a lot of people that did. And so I really wanted to kind of document that journey, because we kept hearing David, turn to the dark side, basically, and all of a sudden, this he snapped. Then there were other people that thought, no, he had planned this out. Then we had the theory that it was David Crowley and his wife had planned this out, and they had planned on doing this, and that was the thing. So none of this to me made sense. And instead of me just kind of, writing up what I thought about what these people said, I said, well, I'm just going to document it all. It's already documented. All I have to do is take all of that data and put it into one place. And the main thing for that chapter was to make sure that I put it in there before it got taken off of Facebook. And even now, some of the stuff that's in there, from what these people say, you probably can't find it. And the things, if you can find it, even the Justice for David Crowley family group, you got to go back years in order to find it, which, Facebook is okay about, searching. But so I wanted to make it really easy for people so that they could say, well, wait a minute, where did he get this from? Why is he saying this? Where's this quote? Is this a real quote? And so it was crucial for me to have that, and the only way to do it was to write it in a timeline, in some type of a timeline. Unfortunately, I did not have the day one journal. If I would have, it may have taken me another year to actually write that book. And even going back and looking with the day one journal, I could do a very different chapter, right? Not a different chapter, but I could add a lot more to it. One thing that I was really happy with is that even after everything that we did know, that we did find out after 2019, it really wouldn't have changed anything that I put in the book. There's definitely things that should be added to it that I would love to go back and maybe add at some point. But I never felt like, there were some things that I should have changed. One of the two things that I probably would change, I believe, is sometimes I would say DNA when it was blood, or I would call it blood, but it wasn't specific to where it said blood. And I think you had helped me correct some of those things that I had gotten wrong, where sometimes I would say blood, but it could be the DNA. So
Touch
some of
DNA.
those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, those are some of the things that I would go back and maybe change. I think I may have found doing the podcast really helped too, because I was able to go back and find a couple of typos or a couple of things that just, like, this sentence doesn't really, I need to rework this sentence or something like that. But I think for the most part, that was the most challenging chapter. That's the biggest chapter of the whole book. It's about 25 pages. It's my favorite chapter. And it brings it all back full circle, because the book starts with us going into the house with the cops. We're right there with them. We're looking at what they look at. We're seeing what they see there, because I want people to ask themselves, are you seeing what they're seeing? Because they're saying within 24 hours, David Crowley is guilty. Boom, case solved, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you read this book, when you read those first chapters, are you seeing that? Or are you seeing what maybe what we're seeing is there's no need to rush to that conclusion here. And really, there's no evidence that David Crowley did this. So yeah,
Right. And one of the theories, which I took notes, that was real popular, especially among the police, is that, especially when the Allahu Akbar was written on the wall, that was David making a jab. That's what the police chief was saying. Oh, he's just making a last jab at his wife. Now, how and why he said that? I mean, David never once said one disparaging word toward his wife, not toward her culture. And in fact, when he was over there, he refused to fight and kill them. And
Right.
so he took a very menial job because he's like, I'm done. I'm laying down my arms. But yet they're like, oh yeah, this is what he did. And he was this right wing. What do they call that? What do they call that? What's the word? I lost the term.
Right wing,
Like a
not
conspiracist or
yeah,
something.
conspiracy theory. There's a different term I
Oh,
think that came out after he died. Obviously, there was a few terms he got labeled with that
yeah.
like that term didn't. It wasn't even a term when he was here in
Right.
2014. So
And yet you say on page 157, and it's the gray shame chapter, where you quote David saying, so for those of you, hopefully you guys have okay ears because it says a bad word, but this is David's words that
oh,
Greg is quoting from. It says, then on March 11th, David asked the question, you know what liberty feels like? Unsubscribing from hundreds of liberty or death fuck the NWO pages and Twitter accounts. Now, if he was so right wing and if he was so into conspiracy theories, why was he unsubscribing from hundreds of pages of those?
mhm.
And a lot of what I gather, again, never met the man, don't know him, but doing research and following him, I can imagine that he probably subscribed to a lot of these because he was needing research and information for the movie. And the fact that he starts unsubscribing, and that was in May. Oh no, March 11th. And the murders didn't occur until, January the next year. He's already unsubscribing. So almost an entire year before the murders take place, he is separating himself from the quote unquote conspiracies. Now, if you hadn't written that in there, I wouldn't have known because I wasn't going around, looking up all of the stuff that he wrote. And you did a lot of tracking his Facebook accounts and writing it down. And again, it's in the book. And to me, that was like that really stuck out. And yet
Yeah.
the police never paid attention.
No, they should have, and for whatever reason they didn't. Now we were told that yeah, there was a lot of strange things happening. Hey there, my friend, how are you? A lot of strange things happening in that last year, which is true, but they were spinning it, and that's what you'll often find. It's like, well, David was distancing himself. They want us to believe he was distancing himself because he was planning this, because he was going crazy, because he was doing drugs and doing all this crazy stuff, going down all these, looking into these crazy conspiracies, et cetera, et cetera. But it turns out he was distancing himself from certain people for very specific reasons. And it wasn't everyone. That's the other thing. They want us to believe that it was everyone. No, it was certain people. And a lot of these people just happened to be the same ones that after he died came out and said that he was guilty without any proof. And we're just so quick to say that David did this. I'm like, no wonder this guy was distancing himself from these shameful people, because everything that they did was just full of shame. And if David wanted to make money, he wouldn't have been unsubscribing from all of those pages, from all of those people, because those are some very powerful people in the quote unquote alternative truth groups. Alex Jones, once he put out there some bad things about Alex Jones, he's separating himself from a lot of Alex Jones fans. Alex Jones had a lot more fans probably back then than he may now, but Alex Jones, it was a big deal. It still is a big deal. So for David Crowley to do that, as at the same time he's trying to get his project into the right hands, Alex Jones could have easily helped him.
Yep.
But for whatever reason, just like many people that I know, David Crowley smelled something foul about Alex Jones. And unlike a lot of people that I know, he actually called him out on it. That does not help David Crowley. That does not help his project. That's not going to help him make money at that time. It may now because of some things that has happened with Alex Jones, but at that time to speak out against Alex Jones back in 2012, 2013, after Alex Jones just had him on to talk about his projects and had been a strong supporter of David Crowley. Alex Jones was in David Crowley's the documentary version, Gray State: The Rise. So he's in there, and so to me, that was a big deal that David Crowley is going to go so far and say that Dave pretty much call Alex Jones out for being all about the money, and that David Crowley did not want to go down that path. That was a big deal. And there were a lot of other people, and probably a lot of private conversations from people that were like, you should not have done that. You're hurting our chances. This isn't just about you. We were part of the Gray State project too. This is our project too. So I think it kind of, that to me is like a line being drawn there. And I didn't focus on that in the book. I didn't want to put my own opinions, my own thoughts, because I knew there would always be time to go back over that and cover that. And but it was a big deal for me, and it's a couple sentences, but for me that was a huge thing that stuck out, is what David Crowley was doing, distancing himself from these NWO or these anti NWO groups. I thought was just a fascinating part of this whole story.
Yeah, because his whole focus on Gray State really kind of was around the NWO and the government and how crazy it was. And then once he had that done and he had that deal with Hollywood, then all of a sudden he's like, okay, I'm backing off now. And he really wanted to focus on other things. He's like, I want this done. I'm so over this.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to move on because he had other ideas, which really, again, by reading the book, we see you do very well in putting out there all of, not just what the police say they found, but the other facts that you found and the other various, forms of social media, which oftentimes, if not all the time, goes against what the police were saying in their reports, and even what those who were associated with him were saying. It's like, on one hand, they would go on TV and go, oh yeah, he really loved his wife, we never saw any problems, blah blah blah, or vice versa. Maybe they said it in their police statement. But on one hand, they're saying really good things about David, and the next thing you know, they're like, well, yeah, he just snapped and killed everybody.
Right.
Well, what is it? Make up your mind.
Right. Yeah, there's and none of their stories really matched either. The stories always change here. At least this is good. The 3Ds: deflect, distract, and divide. Yeah. And it's like this program, and you see it all in this case, and by the same strange cast of characters who all had, who wanted to be part of this, who wanted to be part of David Crowley's project. And then you have David Crowley separating himself from them, distancing, and they don't want to talk about the facts. Everything that is in this book is probably stuff that the Gray State goons are not going to tell the Gray State fans. So it is really the other side. And so when the Gray State goons would go and say Dan and Greg are crazy, the Justice for David Crowley group is crazy, and for the people that would say, well, you know what, let me see what they have to say. And so for those people that, read this book, and that's another reason why I wanted to make it free, to make it out there, to make it, as easily accessible as possible. And so to me, that really left the door open to say, there is an alternative here. And it's crazy that, people that have no association with David, no reason to back this guy up, in some cases like me, did not like David Crowley's work. And here we are defending him against his friends, his family, people that were working with him, that would go out on shoots, that had a real relationship with David Crowley, and we're defending David Crowley. And so people be like, well, if that's what they say, then they must be right because they were with David. They know better than you, et cetera, et cetera. But we've given you many different reasons why I don't care how close these people were with David. They should know better. They should know exactly what we put in this book. Now, if they want to say that what is in the book is wrong, they can definitely do that. And but I would love to hear, what did I get in this book that is wrong?
Well, I mean,
They
they
can
would
find
be,
it.
it's like, good luck, because everything that's in here that I'm looking, you were quoting exactly. And those who have read the police reports, the minute you start looking at this, you're like, okay, yeah, that's the police report. I can probably even tell you, is that the 94 page document or the 485? I mean, because we have read these so much, we can go, oh yeah, I know where that is. Wait, that's his journal. Wait, this is this. And I find it interesting, just like you said, too. It's like the people who say that they loved him are the ones who are throwing him under the bus for their financial gain.
Right.
All of these people who say he was so crazy and this film drove him over the edge, are the same ones that are now trying to steal the profits from what they think they can glean from his work.
Right.
And it's like, whoa. And I like the fact that this book really brings to light all of the hidden agendas of everybody, not just the people involved in Gray State, but it seems like the police department as well. And I don't understand it. It's like, you read through all of this stuff and you're looking at these documents, and let me find, I just went through a really good page here. Let me, where you were including a lot of information from, yeah, like these pages where Greg is showing this is coming from the police reports. And when you're looking at this and you realize it doesn't match, nothing matches. The scene doesn't match what the police say. The scene doesn't match what the people say. And I don't understand. I guess I'm confused why there's not a bigger uproar, but maybe it's because, like you said, not enough people really know about it. I mean, I never heard of him until just by chance Richie from Boston happened to, I just turned on a Richie from Boston video. I was bored one day and he mentioned David Crowley and I'm like, what the heck is this? And then which led me to you guys' group. Well, no, led me to the Netflix movie. And then when I saw that, I started researching, going, oh no, something's not right here. And then I found you guys' group. And then from the rest is history. And so when you did this book, I'm like, whoa, this is very, very helpful.
Yeah, and I'm glad. I'm glad that it is. It's that's all it's supposed to be. It's just supposed to be the other side. And for the people who have not yet gone through all of those documents and everything, this is just kind of like a brief summary, a brief summary, because there's a lot to go through. There's a lot that did not get into the book, a lot that did not make it into the book. And that's even back in 2019. I had ripped a lot of stuff from this book because I really wanted to get it down just to the bare bones, which is something I tried to do with my first book. And the book kind of came out a little bland. I thought it wasn't, I don't know, it just didn't flow the way that this book, I feel like this book just really flows. And I think that's because of how much research that I spent on it all of those years from 2015 to 2017, and then getting into 2018. It's like, how could I not write a book? I have all of this data here. I enjoy writing. I think that the information is relevant, and I feel like a lot of it people were just not, they didn't have access to, they didn't know where to go, and they were also being told a bunch of lies by people who wanted us to believe that David Crowley was guilty. And for those people, I mean, even back in 2015, there were a lot of people that understood, a lot of Gray State fans that understood, no, this is wrong. You guys are making a mockery of David Crowley.
Yeah. And so what was your biggest surprise, if anything, in your research for this book? What were you surprised by the most?
It probably the DNA. Probably the DNA, because I expected a lot more. The fact that they could not tie David Crowley to the blood writing was a big deal, because that's all that you ever hear. Oh, David wrote it. Based on what? What evidence do they have? Just because it was his home? Well, maybe it was his wife. Well, obviously that doesn't really make sense either, because she's, I don't know, that there's just so many reasons why that doesn't
Yeah,
make
because
sense.
his DNA was not in any of the samples taken at
Right.
all.
Right.
You're
And
right, and that's what surprised me was, the lack of DNA. They couldn't even tie him to the weapon. The only DNA evidence they have on that weapon from David is his blood on the magazine.
right.
And it's like, how did his blood get on the magazine? It
Right.
doesn't happen that way. So yeah, it's like, whoa, if you can't even tie him to that trigger and you can't get his prints and nothing, but yet you're saying he did this and his DNA where he lives in that house is not there. It wasn't on the cell phone. His own personal cell phone with Kamel's blood was only Kamel's DNA. He wasn't even on there. And we all know how much we handle cell phones. Every time
Yeah.
we touch our cell phones, we're leaving DNA. And his cell phone didn't have any of his own personal DNA. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that is a big one. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. And some of the stuff that they just did not test, they just didn't even do those tests. But I mean, if you just look at what the tests that they did, you would expect that those DNA results would be what led them to say, okay, we got the proof here. This is why David Crowley did it. His DNA is here. His DNA is all over. His DNA, if his DNA is not tied to the blood writing, why are we supposed to just believe that David Crowley wrote that? And all the media and these gray state goons, they just ran with it, whether they got tricked, whether they got duped, or if they just didn't care. I don't know, but for whatever reason, they just ran with it, and that's not right.
No,
That's
and
not fair.
like Iconic saying, he's saying, "Uh-oh, back to paleo." And yeah, exactly. They try to tell you in their reports. Now, this is not hearsay.
Yeah.
In reports and in interviews, the police will say that paleo somehow got rid of the blood. Now, this dog was very specific. There's no blood from the little girl. There is no blood from David other than what is on the inside of the gun on the magazine. Yet Kamel's blood is everywhere. So the dog picked and choose. I'm just going to eat. I'm just going to lick up all David's blood. I'm just going to lick up Ranya's blood and do that, and then I'm just going to leave Kamel. No, it's like, but they don't stop to think about that and think rationally.
Yeah, and I believe we had a lot of trolls and a lot of people that were purposely sent there to create wild and crazy theories to use those to counter. So instead of focusing to counter what we're saying, they would come in there and they would create these crazy stuff that they would then counter. Or if somebody asked them a relevant question, hey, Greg said this or Catherine said this, they would bring it back to, well, these crazy people have also said this other stuff. They would deflect pretty much. And we saw that so much. It was crazy. It was crazy. Some of those tactics that were used. And it's like, there's that was another reason that led me to think there's more to this than just, what they say happened.
Yeah, and I think about, like you said, it's like if you had added like the Blacklight report and the
Yeah.
journal and everything, I mean, this book would have been like so thick. Because the day one journal proves beyond a shadow of a doubt someone else was accessing their computer from the outside. It shows in there that it was accessed on January 14th. So no matter, I still believe they died in January. People believe they died in December. Regardless, they were still deceased on January 14th. Yet it states the root drive was accessed on January 14th.
Yeah. And
That means somebody was in there.
Yeah, one of the strange things that I also found about and I'm sure not just me, but I think one of the strange things that we know about the Day One Journal is this goes back to some things that were happening where they could not get their dates right. The information by the investigators weren't really lining up with what some of the other investigators said. And here we have one very clear case where the investigators are telling us that the Day One Journal ended on a certain day. And then we get the journal, and it ended later. So, I mean, there's things like that that really kind of make you question, like, how is that possible? Why would the investigators say that? Did they have a different version? Then later they got another version of it. Is the version that we have one that the police don't have? There's just so many different questions like that. I don't believe that that's true, because it ended up coming from them. But at first, when this all got leaked by Tony Floyd, it was just like, wow, this is all stuff that we had been asking for. I still don't understand why they wouldn't release that to us. I mean, I guess the only thing that I can think of is that they wanted that secret knowledge to keep tricking people to say, well, these guys, David or Greg and Catherine and Sophia and Dan and all of them, they just haven't seen the documents that we've seen. So if they saw those, then they would understand. Or we would get people that were telling me that I have seen these documents. They would accuse me of seeing things that I knew David Crowley is guilty, and I'm just hiding it and everything. I'm like,
Oh, that's right. They did that. They did that a lot too.
yeah,
You're like going, it's in the book. Everything I have is right here in the book.
it's all there. And then all this stuff that they accused me of having later on, like the Day One Journal, you read it, and there's nothing in there that would lead anyone to think David Crowley did it. Not any rational, reasonable person. Someone who's grasping for straws, maybe, but
He never once talked ill of his wife. Yeah, he struggled with being a father, but I know a lot of men that struggle with being a father. But the whole point is that before, right after summer ended, or just before, somewhere around the end of summer, is where he writes, he's like, I finally connected with her. Things are so good with Rania. And it's like, that doesn't sound like a man who's going to turn around and do all this stuff.
right.
Not at all. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
so
that's
crazy.
strange.
And then there was something else I was going to talk. Oh, it was like in my brain and left. I hate that. It's like, oh, jeepers. So many things start, running through there and I lose it. But oh, darn it, it's got to come back.
It will. I mean, there was so much that wasn't in this book, and then there was so much that came out after it that, again, it's like, how could anyone think that any of this proves that David Crowley did it? You can think whatever you want, you can believe whatever you want, but it's not based on the facts. The facts are not going to lead you to think, okay, David did it. Not going to happen.
Not one piece of the evidence, and especially what you're showing in here. And again, we have read all of the documents. I've read them all multiple times, and not one piece of evidence points to any even questionable proof that David did this to his family. Now, if it did, I would have no problem saying, man, this man is guilty. Get over it. Here's why. Here's what happened. But nothing. I mean, zero. There's nothing that shows that he did this, but yet everything that points to somebody who either knew them or had a vendetta against them took this out on the entire family, not just him, but they took out his wife and child.
It's brutal.
And
brutal.
The police are okay with that. They're okay with going, oh yeah, he did it. Case closed. We can walk out of here now. We don't have to do any extra work. And that's where I have the biggest problem.
Yeah, it's very, very sad. It's such a strange case, such a very sad case, and I'd never seen any case like this ever.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I have been looking and investigating and crime since, oh my goodness, way back, like in the early 1990s is when I really started doing it. And when like right around 1996, I think was when the internet started to become popular. And way back then, you could actually join a bunch of groups. And I still remember I joined this one group. They were like people who specialized in, they were either FBI, police officers, psychologists, and, but people like me, because I had been investigating and I had a background, I could join their groups too. So, I mean, this is not anything new for me, which is why I commend you for writing a book. I've started one. I can't do it. And it's only because my feelings get in the way really, really fast. And I mean, I have lots of anger toward all of those. I mean, everybody. Because of the lies that are perpetuated, the fact that we have this proof, we bring this proof to them. We show them in their own reports what they said is wrong.
Right.
And wrong in the sense that here's what you wrote, but here's what your conclusion said. And guess what? They don't match. And they're like, we're satisfied. We're happy with our outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. They have no intention. And they made that very clear back in 2015 that there was nothing that was going to change their mind. And at that point, it was also, pretty evident that, okay, somebody's got to stand up for this guy, or even if we're not, I never really felt like I was standing up for David Crowley. It was just showing like, this is what the truth is, guys.
Yeah.
It's not what they're telling you. And I got so sick of every news article that I would read, all had the same thing and all left probably 99% of what's in this book. They left it all out, and they had the same data that we had. They could have easily put some of this stuff in there, and they did not.
I
Why not?
remembered what I was going to say. Yeah, thanks. You jolted my brain. Going back to the evidence in what was written, and I remember because you brought up Tony Floyd, and that's what made it snap in my head. Is at the very maybe about a couple of years into myself looking into this case and doing videos. We've all, just so that you guys know, Greg, Dan, myself, and I don't know, maybe even Sophia, but those of us who have really been researching this case, who have researched this case deeply, we're generally contacted by people and they're very stealth and don't want anybody to know who they are. Well, that's what happened with me. And at the beginning, they're like, hey, look at the metadata. And I'm like, and I didn't have time to do it for a while. And they kept nagging me. Have you done it yet? Look at this. Look at this. Check out the metadata. So I finally started pulling up, because in the programs that I have, because I used to do photography. So I have Lightroom and I have Paint Shop Pro. I have all these programs where I can go in and then look at metadata and see what's written in there. And the metadata is wrong. The metadata has been altered.
Mm.
That's no. That's huge no. Why would they need to change a photograph, alter any lighting, alter anything? You don't. You snap that picture, you leave it as is, and you put it on. But the metadata was incorrect, and some of these photos had been altered. And, I don't know how much they were altered. I could only see that they had been altered. Maybe it was lighting, maybe it was positioning. I don't know. But that doesn't matter. The fact is that someone went in and changed the metadata on the photos. And that is done purposefully. And you have to go into a program and retype things. So this isn't just a simple, oops, that's a mistake. Like Greg was saying, it's like, so much effort was put into leading people down a certain path. And they didn't seem to understand that what they did could be followed. We followed their tracks.
Yeah. And in many cases, they got caught in lies. A lot of people did a lot of lies, and then a lot of things that they just tried to not even talk about. Like someone had somehow, I didn't even think about asking about the dog feces. Did they test the dog feces? I didn't think about asking that until it was brought up by somebody in the group, probably like at the very end, as I was finishing up this book. It took them a year to answer that. And I don't even know if I put that in the book, because this was all during COVID. So I don't even think that I had that clear answer yet. And I was not going to put anything in the book that I could not really back up, or that I did not feel like I had a answer for it. And it wasn't that, and that's why there's a lot of stuff that was left out. And I think that that disappointed some people too, because they had been telling me things, and there were things that they wanted in the book. I felt like there were people, like you say, contacting us privately that were trying to mislead me, that were trying to steer me down a certain path, that wanted me to look at their evidence and and go with it. And what I find is if you push back on those people and push back hard early on, if they're real, they'll stick with you. If they're not, they're going to get angry, and they're going to, join a group that is built to be your fan club, pretty much. You find that. So, and then you get accused, well, you're me. I thought you were a Christian. I thought you were this. Like, well, yeah, you guys are testing me. I'm testing you too. I never said that to them, but you know, um, I'm sure that at some point they had to have realized that you're fishing for information from me. Well, guess what? I'm also fishing too, because I need to know if you are a real person, and if you are, then you're not going to get mad at me when I disagree with you on this stuff. And more so than not, a lot of people did. A lot of people did get mad, and they accused me of things, like I said, of hiding things, and they would go ask people, and they would just start following them because they didn't like me. They didn't like my views on Trump. They didn't like how I felt about gays. They didn't like how I felt about Jesus. So they would look for things, or they would purposely, they couldn't separate those views from this case. And
Yeah, and that's so true, because back then, especially when the thing happened, because of my stance on it, and I just have a whole different, I have a different viewpoint on it because I come from a different background. And because I was verbal about that, and I was at odds with someone who was a little bit bigger on YouTube at that time, I lost over half, well over like 2/3 of my subscribers. As soon as they came to my channel and said something very rude to me because of what I said, on one of my videos, I mean, they just left. And I'm
mm,
like, okay, you're gonna leave. I thought you guys were here to support David Crowley. And if you don't agree with what I say about that situation, that's fine. I'm not asking you to, but you're supposed to be supporting him. But they didn't care. It's like people just in, out, in, out. And it's like, wow, okay, guess we know where you really were at the time.
right.
But, I know you had started a second book on this case, and you had a whole bunch of people dropping chapters. Now, is that something that you plan on finishing just because it was covering a lot of other information? Or are you just going to let that go by the wayside for a bit? Because I want other people to, I want to know if we have something else to look forward to, because this is so good.
Yeah, I'm still kind of 50-50 on it. I feel like I probably have enough for a second book on my own. I've always wanted to write that book where you get 5 to 10 people and everybody writes their own chapter. I think it's a great idea. It's something I would still love to be part of. I don't know if I would want to take lead on it. I think that would be my only thing. It's a lot of work to make sure that everybody gets their chapters done, that everything is solid. There's no slander or anything like that. So I think that would be my only hesitation now. Is I'd love to be a part of it. I just don't know if I have the time, really, just with family stuff and with everything else. I don't know if I have the time to really take the lead to make sure that it gets done properly.
Well, okay. I mean, there are editors out there. Well, I only know because I know some of the stuff that was in there. Um, I don't think you give yourself enough credit, Greg. I thought what you were doing and what I saw before was very good. And if you need somebody to come in and check to see if there's, if it's not sticking to facts and it starts, going down an emotional pathway, I mean, I'll help you out. There are also editors, we can work on getting editors for the book, which would be a completely outside source,
That's true.
who could look for that. But, it's just because I know I read some of the stuff that you have written in there, and I don't know, it just seems like I think people would get a lot out of that book,
Yeah,
because you cover a lot of stuff, again, that you either didn't have access to, or for whatever reason could not be included in this one, so you were putting it in the second one. So I hope one day soon you you get that finished, because it was good, and I'm just like, okay, please finish it.
Well, thank you for that. I definitely appreciate that. I felt like, yeah, it's some of the stuff that I was writing, it kind of gets into it. I felt like it was taken away from the case almost. I didn't want to make the book about me. And again, it goes back because these people contacted me. And so how do you do that? You have to make it about you because you're writing about what these people said about you, or what the conversation, the things that they've told you. So I don't know. I'm still like I said, I'm still 50-50 on it. I'm not closing the door, but I would rather see somebody take what we have so far and take lead on it.
Okay, because here's why I think it's important that you include information like that. Not because necessarily it has anything to do with the case per se. However, it lets the reader know the hell we have gone through fighting for justice for this man and his family.
Yeah.
And that is what shows really what we have been put through the ringer, all of us. And it's like people need to understand what it is and despite that, we still fight for the justice, not for David, but for the justice. It's just, it happens to be his name attached to it,
Yeah.
because I don't care if his name was Joe Blow from Timbuktu, I would still have gone with it. And I believe you would have too, with the same type of gusto. Look what they did to this person. This isn't right.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so clear. It's such a slam dunk case. And that was one of my biggest beefs with some of these alternative media people that I was already kind of on the outs with, already kind of like, oh, okay, you know what? Instead of listening to what they say and then going to research what they say, I'm just going to kind of steer clear from them and see what happens. And God showed me pretty quickly that a lot of the people that I was following are not who I thought that they were. They're not the researchers that I thought that they were. Their motivations are not what I thought that they were. That doesn't mean that I'm right, but that's what I believe, and that's what I truly think about a lot of these people that were a part of the quote unquote truth movement are not real. They're not real people who really care about doing the research and getting involved and trying to get justice. They act like they are, and they act like they want truth, but they're doing shows. Their motivation is different. It's a different thing. I don't have a weekly show. I don't have money coming in from those shows. I work 9 to 5 at a regular job and then do this stuff on my own time. I'm not willing to risk any of that to put myself in the spot where these people can be compromised. And I believe that some of them are, because they have to make a living. They have to walk this fine line. They have to be careful about what they say, what their sponsors want, and all of that stuff. So it was very eye opening to me to really see that a lot of the people back in the early 2000s, after 9/11, after the Iraq War, really, after I started learning about there's something really odd here, around 2004, 2005, all the people that I was following, or a lot of them, are the same people that were involved with this project at some time, or David has actually spoken to them and are in David Crowley's the documentary film. A lot of them are in there, and I
Yeah.
see it. I see them totally different now than what I did way back then.
Yeah, and every single person that I could find that was involved with either the Gray State or with David or anybody, and I mean everybody I could find, without exception, have never returned an email or a phone call from me.
Mm.
Not one person. And and I would give them, I'm like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've been doing. I would like to know if you would like to talk about David Crowley. you said this on this episode, blah, 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 blah. Here's my channel. You can see what I'm doing. I'm not some stupid troll. And, when you have over 100 videos, it's kind of like, okay, maybe the person, is really looking into it. Nobody responded. I can't even get the police to respond to an FOIA request. So I'm like, wow. And that opened my eyes a lot. A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the sad truth of it. But, at least it showed us who some of these people are, what they're really like, and it was sad to learn some of that. Some of that I kind of understood. Some of their personalities I gravitated towards them because I had the same type of a personality, at least at that point, or I wanted to have the personality that they had. I wanted to be as brave as I thought they were being. But when they all shut up about David Crowley, I started asking myself, how brave are these people?
Right.
What do they really care? If they don't care about this slam dunk case that is not going to hurt them to talk about it, why aren't they talking about it?
Yeah.
And it changed my view on a lot of people.
Unfortunately,
No.
I know Greg's like, I wasn't. I mean, I was, because some of the people I really thought would respond. And I mean, there was nothing at all. Although I do have to say that even though one of the people who did not respond to me, they did respond to you, and we all did a video together. So that I was grateful for. I'm like, okay, so he ignored me, but at least he ignored my request to him, but we did get together and do a video. So then it's like, okay, so maybe I shouldn't say 100. Well, I don't know. Take it as you will. Is that 100% or not? But
Yeah.
They at least did come forward and say, no, that I know this man. I was with him, and that's not who he is. But in closing, because I know you have a family and you're not feeling well, is there anything else you want to say final about your book? Other than, I mean, you guys, it's a fantastic book. And Greg does often give these out for free, but I'm telling you, buy it. It is worth the money. That's my take. I'm an author as well, but he deserves the money for the research he put into this. Any last words?
The book did really, really well. I didn't expect to really sell any copies, just to friends, just to people who just want to have that, or who want to support what I'm doing, what we're all doing. But the response was overwhelmingly positive. It's very rare that I get anyone. I mean, I may get people that criticize me or a video or something like that, but not the book, really. Even some of the people that don't like me, I've heard some positive. They've said some positive things about the book. I think one even said that, well, I take this as a negative or a positive. I don't know, but it's pretty much he just took all this stuff and did like a copy paste. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what I did. All I did was put what is out there and put it into one book here. So like there's no creativity, because all he did was just take the information.
Well, that's what you were telling him. That was the purpose of the book. And it's not all copy paste, but however, you do include a lot of the documents, and you show the photographs of the documents. And that, my dear friends, is not a bad thing, because it's the proof right up front. And again, for those who want to know, it's called The Gray Stage, based on The Gray State by David Crowley, and it's by Greg Fernandez Jr. And I will put a link underneath the video where you guys will be able to get this book, and please buy it. It's well worth it, especially if you like true crime and you like the facts and not just somebody's storied fantasy. When I compare, okay, I read the book Evil Intentions, based on two murders out of Arizona, and it was nothing but fabricated fantasy ideology by the author. It was horrible. And the reason why I know that is because I interviewed these criminals and I read all of the case documents I could get my hands on, from the police and from the inmates themselves. It didn't even match up. But with this, I love this book because of the fact that you include, not only do you put in copies of the actual documents, but then you also list them in the back where you got the information from, and then where people can get it from.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have that on your website as well.
Yeah, they can download it. They can download it free too if you just want to get a PDF version and download it. And if you're like me, you can't read digital books, you can just print it out, go to your library, go somewhere, you can print it out for probably a couple dollars, hopefully. But or else it is out there. The only other thing that I really want to do one day with this book is do a hardcover copy. I think that's probably the next step, but uh, um, that may be another year or so out because of the book that I'm writing now. That book, there's no way that's going to be done until next summer, just because we don't know what's going to happen in 2024. So at the end of November, and then but I'm not done with this case. We know Catherine isn't. We know that a lot of people aren't. So I don't know if you want to call it that I'm taking a break, or that I just am really focused on this other book that I'm writing now, but definitely not completely done with this case. And if new information comes out, as more information does come out, which I believe that it will, we'll still be here to cover it. I'm not on Facebook. Has nothing to do with the David Crowley case. One of the only reasons why I was still on Facebook was because of the David Crowley case. But I'm not on Facebook, and I don't know if I plan on coming back to Facebook, unfortunately. But I am on YouTube. You'll find me on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only reason I came back to Facebook, was because of the David Crowley case. I'd been off for many years and I loved it. And
yeah,
I don't blame you.
Although I found myself on TikTok, but again, not with anything with me. You're not going to find me dancing half naked on TikTok or anything like that. It is strictly just to talk about Kennedy and Trump, and all I do is just post clips of them. That's it. But anything that I do where it's just something like this will be right here on Facebook, on the Greg Fernandez Jr. Channel, or we'll get back to the Gray Stage channel too. And of course, if I get banned, because I have 2 Greg Fernandez Jr. channels out there, so hopefully I don't lose this one that I already have 2 strikes on. But
I know, hopefully you stick around. But just so you guys know, in the very near future, though, Greg will be back and we will talk about his second book, which is What is Truth? It's the 9/11 story, which is also another excellent book. He says it's dry and everything, but again, it's information. Yes, show that.
It's a little dry, but yeah.
No, okay. It's got a lot of really good information in that as well. So we will cover that in the near future. And then also after that, I plan on bringing it back in for a third time, and we will discuss the books that he was just discussing, the one he's working on now about what's happening in the world today. But thank you so much, Greg. Is there anything else you want to say in closing?
No, that's it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Greg.
All right. Bye now.